"We're not funding this circus," my mom said, calm, cutting, final. My wedding plans, my future, all erased with one sentence. My sister didn't even blink. "Better luck next time," she added, smirking like it was a joke. Dad stayed silent the way he always did when she decided who I was allowed to be. I could have screamed. Instead, I said one word, understood, and walked out. They thought I'd break. They thought I'd crawl back like always. But 3 weeks later, when their world started to collapse, they finally learned what that word really meant. And it began with a single phone call. From the outside, my family looked like the kind people envied. Brick house, polished smiles. Sunday dinners no one dared miss, but inside every laugh came with a rule attached. My mother, Carol, built our lives on control how we spoke, dressed, dated, even what we dreamed. My father, Robert, followed her lead, the quiet echo behind every decision. And my sister, Shannon, she could do no wrong. When we were kids, I wanted to design dresses. I'd fill sketchbooks with fabrics and colors. One afternoon, Mom found my drawings, held them like evidence, then tossed them straight into the trash. "You're not wasting your life on fantasies," she said. My father just stood there nodding like he agreed. That day I learned silence could keep the peace. Years passed. I became what they wanted, an accountant, steady, safe. Shannon went to college for marketing, creative enough to sound respectable. When she opened her boutique, Mom threw her a party boasting about her daughter's vision. I remember watching them toast under string lights, Mom's pearls glinting as she said, "You've always had flair." Flair. The word still stings. Mine was never allowed. Then came Eric. I met him at a community fundraiser, the kind of event my parents called small-town nonsense. He worked for a nonprofit, mentoring kids, laughed too easily, asked real questions. With him, I felt seen not as a project, but as a person. The first time I brought him home, Mom's smile froze halfway. So she said, "What do you do?" when he explained, her lips curved into something polite but cold. "How admirable," Dad muttered. "At least he's kind." Shannon just whispered, "Ambition's optional, I guess," and giggled. For 3 years, Eric stood by me through their quiet judgment. We planned our wedding carefully, responsibly. The Ivy House, beautiful but modest, was our dream venue. We saved every dollar ourselves. When Mom offered to help, I thought maybe she'd changed. She said she wanted the best for me. I should have known better. That morning when she called me back to the house, I thought it was about flowers or catering, not war. The moment I walked in, I felt it, the tension, the silence before the blade. She stood by the fireplace, arms folded. Shannon sprawled across the couch, scrolling through her phone. Dad stared at the rug. "We're not funding this circus," Mom declared. "Better luck next time," Shannon added without looking up. The words hit like a slap, sharp, humiliating, deliberate. I felt heat rise behind my eyes, but I didn't let them see it. I straightened my back, nodded once, and said, "Understood." The room went still. Mom blinked, confused. Shannon smirked, sure I'd given up. But what they didn't know was that silence was no longer my surrender. The drive back to my apartment felt endless. The sky hung low, gray, and heavy, the kind that made the world look smaller. My phone buzzed the whole way, Eric calling, but I couldn't answer. I needed the quiet, the hum of the road to steady me. By the time I reached home, my hands had stopped shaking. Mostly. The invitations sat on my kitchen counter, cream paper gold trim, our names printed side by side. I stared at them for a long time before sweeping the whole stack into a box. It wasn't anger yet, just numbness. The kind that sits in your chest like a stone. Eric showed up that evening, his face worried but gentle. "What happened?" "They canceled it," I said, flatly. He blinked. "Canceled. They can't just..." "They did. Called the venue, the florist, everything. It's done." He stepped closer, searching my face. "Do you want me to go talk to them?" I shook my head. "No. This time it's my turn." Later that night, I found myself flipping through an old drawer. At the very bottom was my high school sketchbook, the one Mom had thrown away years ago. The edges were bent, pages smudged with pencil lines. Dresses, blazers, shoes, all the things I used to love before she told me not to. I traced one sketch with my finger and felt the burn of something I hadn't let myself feel in years. Defiance. The word understood echoed in my head. It used to mean surrender. It meant you win. But not this time. Not anymore. I thought about every understood I'd ever said when she chose my college major, when she said accounting was respectable, when she told me love should look like money and status. Every understood was a piece of me she'd taken. That night I wrote a list. Every account, every payment, every contract connected to the wedding. Something didn't feel right, too precise, too immediate. You don't cancel a full event that fast without preparation. I called the Ivy House the next morning. The coordinator hesitated before answering. "I'm sorry, Ms. Perry, but your mother already sent us your signed cancellation notice." What I asked. She paused. "It had your signature." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at my reflection in the dark phone screen. Someone had forged my name. My family hadn't just canceled my wedding, they'd erased me from it entirely. I drove straight to Diane Cole's office the next morning. She'd been my company's attorney once, sharp and unshakable, the kind of woman who looked like she'd been born in a courtroom. When I told her what happened, she didn't gasp or frown, she just started writing. "Show me the paperwork," she said. I handed her every file I had, payments, invoices, the original contract for the Ivy House. Diane flipped through each page pen, tapping against the desk in steady rhythm. Then she froze. "This cancellation form," she murmured, holding it up. "That's not your handwriting." I leaned closer. My name was there, sprawled across the page in clumsy ink. My signature, but not. Diane looked up, her eyes sharp. "Someone forged it. And if they used your financial info to make payments, that's a crime." The word crime hit me like a cold slap. I wasn't just dealing with manipulation anymore. This was theft, deliberate, calculated. We spent hours combing through details, every transaction, every withdrawal from the wedding account. And that's when we saw it, thousands of dollars wired to Shannon Perry, designs her boutique. Another trail led to my parents' credit card payments and home renovations. "They used your money to cover their debts," Diane said, "and I'll bet it gets worse." That night I sat in the dark with only my laptop screen lighting the room. I replayed every moment in my head, Mom's cold tone, Shannon's smirk, Dad's silence. It all clicked into place. The wedding wasn't just a power move. It was a cover-up. The next day, my phone rang. Uncle Stephen's name flashed across the screen. We hadn't spoken in months, but his voice was tight, uneasy. "Eleanor, there's something you need to know," he said. "It's about your grandfather's trust fund." I froze. "What about it?" "He set it up years ago. $250,000. It's yours, but it activates only when you marry. Your parents have been managing it and withdrawing from it." I checked the records myself. The air left my lungs. "You're saying they've been using the money for years," Stephen said softly. "Shannon's business, the house remodel, all from your trust. If you'd gotten married, it would have triggered a full audit. They had to stop it." I pressed a hand over my mouth. My own family hadn't just stolen from me. They'd destroyed my future to keep it hidden. After the call, I sat still for a long time. The anger came slowly, quietly, like a storm forming over still water. I opened my laptop, typed a message to Diane. "We're filing the case." Then I whispered to no one but myself. They wanted control. Now they'll get consequences. The courtroom smelled faintly of old paper and polished wood. Rows of strangers whispered behind me, the hum of air conditioning drowning out my heartbeat. I sat at the plaintiff's table beside Diane, my hands clasped so tightly my knuckles ached. Across the aisle, my family looked smaller than I remembered. Mom's hair was perfect as always, but her pearls didn't shine the same under fluorescent light. Dad's tie was crooked. Shannon scrolled on her phone until the bailiff told her to stop. When the judge entered, everyone stood. "Case number 4721. Perry versus Perry," the clerk announced. The words stung more than I'd expected. Diane began calmly. "Your Honor, this case involves the unauthorized use of my client's financial assets and a forged signature on legally binding documents. We intend to show that Eleanor Perry's parents and sister not only interfered with her wedding plans, but also misappropriated her inheritance." Mom leaned toward her attorney, whispering something sharp. She didn't like losing control of the story. Diane laid out everything: the forged cancellation form, the bank withdrawals, the payments funneled to Shannon's boutique. She passed copies to the judge, each page landing with a soft, deliberate slap. Then came the trust fund. Uncle Stephen took the stand looking uneasy in his suit. My father, Eleanor's grandfather, set up a trust of $250,000 for her. It would release upon her marriage. I recently discovered funds missing. Who withdrew them? Diane asked. He swallowed hard. Robert and Carol Perry. The courtroom rippled. Mom's lawyer objected. Irrelevant. The fund was managed within family rights. Diane's tone stayed calm. Family rights don't cover fraud. Mom's eyes darted toward me, sharp and cold. You don't understand, Eleanor. We were trying to protect you. That boy, Eric, he's beneath you. He would have dragged you down. I met her gaze. Protect me by stealing from me. Her voice cracked. We only used what we needed. Shannon was drowning in debt. We couldn't just let her fail. Maybe she should have, I said quietly. Maybe it would have taught her what accountability looks like. Shannon slammed her hand on the table. You think you're better than us? You've always been the boring one. Our parents did everything for you. The judge rapped his gavel once. Order. Diane turned to Shannon. Miss Perry, did your parents transfer any of your boutique expenses from Eleanor's trust? Shannon hesitated, her confidence fading. I didn't know where the money came from. Really? Diane lifted a document. Because this invoice for your boutique renovation lists your father's signature and Eleanor's trust account number. Shannon's face drained of color. By the time Diane rested her case, every secret was on the table. Mom tried to play the martyr, Dad mumbled half-hearted apologies, and Shannon cried into a tissue she didn't really use. When the judge finally spoke, his voice was steady, cold, final. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff. All funds misappropriated from the trust are to be returned immediately. Additional damages of $50,000 will be awarded for fraud and emotional distress. Mom's breath hitched. Dad's shoulders collapsed. Shannon stared at me with pure disbelief. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just exhaled for the first time in months. Outside the courthouse, the sky was clear, a rare blue that felt almost staged. Reporters weren't there. No crowd, just quiet. Diane turned to me. You did it. I just stopped them, I said. That's all. A week later, I stood at the Ivy House again, the same archway where my mother's words had haunted me, but this time it was mine. The garden lights flickered softly, tables draped in white linen, simple and elegant. Eric waited at the end of the aisle, his tie slightly crooked, his smile unwavering. Owen waved from the second row. Uncle Stephen gave a proud nod, and Diane, who never smiled much, actually did. When the music started, I felt my throat tighten. No mother adjusting my veil, no father walking me down the aisle, just me walking myself. Every step felt like reclaiming something stolen. As I reached Eric, he whispered, "You okay?" "I'm more than okay," I said and meant it. We said our vows quietly, not for show, not for anyone else. The officiant pronounced us husband and wife, and for a moment all I could hear was the wind through the ivy and the faint sound of laughter, real laughter. After the ceremony, I slipped away for a moment, standing beneath the same oak tree where I once cried after everything fell apart. I looked up at the lights and thought about how silence had become my weapon. My mother once called my wedding a circus. Now it was peace. Inside, music and warmth filled the air. Eric caught my hand and pulled me to dance. The world blurred faces, lights, all of it. When the night ended, I wrote one last email. Simple, clean. Carol, Robert, Shannon. The court showed who you are. I wish you the best, but this is goodbye. I hovered for a second, then hit send. Outside, crickets hummed. Eric wrapped his arm around me, and for the first time in years, I felt free. A few weeks later, the calls began. First Mom, then Dad, then Shannon. Each one left a message that sounded the same: soft voices, forced apologies, a little tremble for sympathy. We just want to talk, sweetheart. Can we meet just once? Things got out of hand. I didn't answer. The phone buzzed on the counter while I folded laundry, cooked dinner, lived my life. Every vibration felt weaker than the last. Then came the voicemail that made me pause. Mom's voice, brittle and tired. Your father lost his job. Shannon's boutique. It's gone. We're trying to start over. We need help. I stared at the wall, not angry anymore, just hollow. They had taken enough. From Owen, I later heard the full story. Dad laid off after a scandal. Mom working part-time at a department store, Shannon drowning in debt. The same people who once dictated my life couldn't even keep their own afloat. One night, the calls started again, back to back to back. The screen lit up with their names. I picked it up, typed slowly, and sent one text. "The circus is already full." Then I placed the phone face down, poured myself a glass of wine, and went back to sketching under the soft kitchen light. The next morning, sunlight poured through the window, warm and quiet. Eric kissed my forehead before leaving for work, and I sat at my desk surrounded by fabric swatches and half-finished sketches. My first design line was taking shape, mine, not theirs. Freedom didn't feel loud. It felt still, steady, earned. I glanced at my phone on the table, no new calls, no apologies, just silence. The kind that finally meant peace. Mom once said my wedding was a circus. Maybe she was right, because now the show was over and I was the one who walked away smiling. If you've ever had to choose yourself over family, tell me in the comments. Hit subscribe. There's always another story to tell.